Hello, everyone. Thanks, Jeff. It's tricky to come after Stacy, whose body of work continues to inspire us as we work in this space. I'm Priyanka Sharma. I'm a project director at World Education. It's lovely to kind of see a lot of familiar names in this webinar. So I hope to learn from you in the breakout session, as well as answer your questions. Today, I'm plan to focus on the work that we're doing around digital navigator services in different contexts, and want to set the stage a little bit with a sort of like a common shared definition for digital inclusion and what we mean when we talk about digital inclusion. A lot of times when it's mentioned in media or policy or elsewhere, usually it's about access to internet connectivity, having access to devices to be able to connect to the internet for goals and tasks that need to be done in this day and age, which are most of our tasks, as well as the right skills to be able to interact with technology and be successful at what you're trying to do, all the way from paying a bill online to interacting with your kid's school to just working in a remote context more so now. Where we feel that it gets tricky a lot of times is the assumptions that are made when we talk about the access to connectivity and devices and the skills. There's lots of logical jumps that are made all over. So what we at Digital Us and at Tech Center at World Education want to really emphasize is this idea of when we're talking about connectivity, it needs to be something that's reliable and affordable, something that actually makes sense and fits in people's lives as they struggled through a pandemic and afterwards, something that is affordable enough for them to keep that connectivity to the internet as part of their utilities, the critical utilities that they have in their homes, as well as the right devices. So it's not just about having a device in a home, as all of you know who are, probably have some kids or a partner in your homes, sharing space, sharing internet, sharing devices, that having a device per household doesn't really make any sense anymore, just because kids have to do schoolwork, people have to do job related work, life related work on devices. So sharing devices and connections has become an issue, and skills that go with effectively using those devices, performing tasks, and the accessibility of training, like how easy it is for people to seek information and get the supports that they need to be effective users of the devices. And I'm going to spend a minute to talk about the reality of the digital divide. This is our reality that we function in, and a lot of you live through this, through your learners, in the communities that you're a part of. But I just wanted to highlight some stark differences here, especially when it comes to connectivity. As we look across the US, we know that there's 18 million unconnected households, which means that there's not sort of like a pipe running into their homes with stable broadband internet. And the stable is the definition of what stable means and what a pipe running through your home means. There's whole organizations and policies set around it, so I'm not going to delve much deeper into that. For the context of our conversation today, I do want to really state that the 18 million number that we know from a lot of research is pretty inadequate too. Like that number runs much, much higher than that, only because of the way it's determined as to which house is connected and which is not. So if the house is, so if there's one house connected in like some blocks of houses, that whole area is supposed to be connected. So there's a lot of undercounting there. What is critical for us to know is that it's not just a rural problem, it is a problem of affordability more so, because a lot of those houses are actually in urban areas, densely populated urban areas. And the other aspect that we need to keep in mind as we're thinking about, as you've probably served your learners through the year of the pandemic, is that uh, there's lots of households that are relying on just smartphones for their internet, and they don't have the right devices. And you can kind of see that there's a racial equity, the intersection of racial equity here when it comes to access, in terms of who actually is relying on a smartphone only access, with perhaps data caps that are reached pretty quickly, with a device, AKA a smartphone for a household, so that when that person leaves the home with a smartphone, the internet goes with them, and who's also unlikely to continue with a service when there's a loss of income or any other eventuality that happens in a family. The last thing that I also want you to also see, something that's a stark difference as we think about race here, is the percentage of adults owning a laptop or a desktop, and how likely it is for Black households or Hispanic Latinx households to own a device or rely solely on smartphone only internet. And the overlay with skills is also critical to think about, because we have plenty of data from PIAC, from other ways in which we are getting a sense of people's digital skills, is that there's a disproportionate need for digital skills building in Black adults as well as Latinx adults. And keeping all of this in mind, I want to get into what is it that sort of propelled us, in addition to everything that we're doing at Tech Center, to really launch this national coalition, the Digital Us Coalition, which I co-lead with my colleague, Alison Asher-Weber. And it was our intention, and remains our commitment, to bring national partners together and work through some solutions as we work on digital inclusion and work on especially closing that digital divide. And you can kind of see our inaugural report at the link that's down here, if you're more interested in this work. As we got started with our work with Digital Us and working with national partners and how they were looking at bridging the digital divide, and what we thought was a critical need is to come up with a place that's a space, a person that's accessible for just-in-time supports. I mean, I think as adult education programs, we have been working for a long time. I have done a lot of work with, many of you on this call around college and career readiness, and we have been working with integrating technology in education, with making sure that people have the right digital literacy skills to succeed in their post-secondary work and training. But a lot of times there's assumptions made on what people know and what they don't know, assumptions made by people themselves and assumptions made by us, and whose responsibility it is for making sure that they have those right digital skills. Since digital skills training, at least as of now, isn't necessarily incentivized in the way we do programming. So, the amount of digital literacy instruction delivered is spotty, depending on what the program and the instructors are thinking of doing. So as we got to this place where a lot of the learning has been remote, we also decided to think about the Digital Navigator services as a space that starts first in a remote context and then moves into a more in-person space as things start opening up. So the question is, what are Digital Navigator services? The way we define it, it could be a person or several people at a program, at a consortium of programs, at a library, at other workplaces that are sort of the hub, the main point person when it comes to making sure that the people that are in the community have somebody to go to talk about and get resources around affordable internet, around devices, and especially make sure that they have a digital navigator to talk to ask questions related to digital skills development, be that from a learning perspective, from an opportunity perspective in terms of applying for benefits or looking for jobs, etc. So I think we see that not just as one person, but almost as a model that has multiple services as part of it. So you'll kind of see the digital navigator services mentioned over and over again as I talk about this. And as part of that work, last year, just in the heat of the pandemic, we started some pilots in different parts of the country, and it's been very interesting to have, as you know, as almost a year has gone by, and we have lots of lessons from the work that has been done by these programs by some states. And also fascinating to kind of see where this work is moving forward with other Digital Us partners. So we work closely with the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, NDIA, for those of you who are familiar with them and their digital inclusion work for many years. They also they're working with additional programs and states in terms of their digital navigator model. So we're all working closely to make sure that we're sort of building off of each other's work as we implement these services across the country. And our hope at Digital Us, as well as the EdTech Center, is making sure that we are able to support anybody who's willing and is interested in the digital navigator idea and see how it fits in their own context. So the way that we at Digital Us have been approaching this model is beyond just finding new resources, creating a new position for a digital navigator, although a lot of programs are doing that. Our idea comes from a place of sustainability and thinking far ahead beyond this pandemic, and the intention of having these services be embedded within systems that we work with, so that A, they're sustainable, and B, we are thinking about a long-term solution to a problem that took a very long time to come to the place it was. And we don't really, and we understand, we've been here long enough to understand that there's not like a on and off switch for it, and that, you know, we can solve this problem in a very quick way, although that would be nice. So we want these services to be embedded and in different ways, in different programs, in different contexts, so that we're able to really work on closing that digital skills divide, the digital access divide that, you know, that we're in the midst of right now. So for to generate more questions from you, and also just to kind of show you the potential of this particular approach, I want to talk a little bit more about how this is being implemented in different contexts. In the adult education and training programs we're working with, they are integrating services within their advising and orientation activities. Like, they have a person who used to do orientation, the same person is now sort of the designated digital navigator as well, making sure that learners have the right devices, if that's something that they're actually doing. Of course, the thing to also understand is that not every program can work on all of the sort of three prongs of digital inclusion, from connectivity to devices to skills, just because of the way they're either funded or just they're not able to do that right now, even if they understand that devices are a big need. Some of them have been able to raise external funds to pay for the devices, or get money from the stimulus funding, but others just are not able to do that. So they're relying on their community partners to connect learners to devices if applicable, or starting their own loaner programs. Some other programs that we're working with, more often than not, are turning to their career coaches or advisors to have them do this additional role of a digital navigator, to make sure that learners are able to connect remotely and actually persist through distance learning. and remote teaching that's going on. In terms of the public libraries and the community-based programs, they are more working on making connections with the low-cost internet information. You know, if a community has a connecting them to external partners or even cable providers that they partner with to provide and make sure that there's awareness in the folks who need internet connectivity to understand that there are ways in which they can get internet connectivity, filling out those forms with them, because sometimes they ask a lot of information which people are not always comfortable in sharing. And then also partnering with other local organizations to make sure that they're sort of, not duplicating services, but really working to each other's strengths. We see these programs as sort of being key as new opportunities come up to really provide additional resources to people, vouchers for internet service. What has really come up, which is encouraging, is that there's a new rule, which probably a lot of you have already heard about. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit. It is coming through FCC. It was part of the stimulus package that was passed last fall, but it just got finalized. And it's going to roll out in the next 3 weeks. So a lot of our programs that we're working with are jumping on this opportunity to make sure that the $50 per month voucher for internet services that basically is going to be available on a first come first serve basis is something that their clients or learners are able to take advantage of, so that their internet costs are subsidized at least till the end of this year. And there is some level of commitment from the government, from the current administration, to kind of seeing how this particular benefit can move forward. And what I'll do is I'll probably post a link, if Ebony can probably do that too, to kind of the information we have on emergency broadband benefit. Our other partners are also doing webinars on it. And we'll also make sure and work with COABE and others to make sure that the adult education system has a clear understanding of how they can disseminate this information around eligibility to their learners, because a lot of them might qualify to be eligible for these vouchers. A lot of the burden of this, sorry, I need to go into this a little bit because all of you are very interested in this topic. A lot of the burden of this is on the individual themselves, but we as adult educators can play a role in disseminating this information to make sure that we're at least making some small step in making sure that they're able to take advantage of this opportunity. There's another aspect to it, which is a $100 voucher, potential voucher for a device. We're still working closely with some aspects of the administration and others to understand what that would look like, who can get it, and how it's going to be disseminated. So stay tuned for that, because that is really something that can make a difference in our adult learners' life, and especially for their family. The last context in which we're working is working with workforce development organizations and employers in figuring out if there's any sort of connections that can be made around device recycling. Devices, for those of you, even if you raise funds to buy devices for your learners and loan them out on a temporary basis, it's been challenging to get devices in this day and time. So we're working with some digital as partners and some employers that we're working with to make sure that they have new connections where there's donation programs set for these employers to work with refurbishers for low-cost devices in the community, and how digital navigators can be part of sort of that ecosystem as well. And as I talk about that, I mean, I think one of the things that comes to mind, and I'm going to go into resources and check what's happening in the chat. One of the things that's happening with digital navigators, especially in the way we're thinking about it, that's very exciting to us, is how these multiple, these parallel systems a lot of times are coming together for digital navigator services. But then also, there's a lot of interest from Department of Labor and other parts of federal government and states to figure out how this can be integrated. We're working with a couple of PD organizations and systems to seeing how they can really embed these services in the way programming is done in their state, just because of the need that you all experience in your programs and in your states around the scaffolding that learners need. One of the last things that I'll say, and then I have a question for Stacy to share, is that we have the programs, we've been working with multiple programs, as I said, and we're finally beginning to get a lot of learnings from Digital Navigator services that they are providing. There's a lot more questions around devices and internet connectivity than skills themselves. And what we're beginning to find is that with the lack of that in-person connection, it has been hard for learners to call in with help around digital skills. So a big lesson to us is, again, think about embedding Digital Navigator services within existing roles. An advisor, a recruitment person, or an intake person, or somebody else in the program who's already a familiar name to learners, so that they know that they can then get connected with them if they have questions about digital skills or just accessing remote learning, and soon in-person learning with integrated technology. And I know Stacy had a very exciting project over the summer where she interviewed some folks who were interacting with digital navigators. And would you like to share some of the learnings from there?
Sure, I'll try to be super brief since I know we're about out of time. But I just wanted to totally, our research lines up exactly with what Priyanka said, is that people want to get assistance from people that they know, whether it's be case managers, family or friends. And the important thing there, then, if you're going to be incorporating Digital Navigator services on top of existing roles, make sure that you give people more space in their job to do so, because it takes a lot of time. And in our program, case managers were not given quite enough other job duties did not get lifted, and they felt a lot of stress and on top of that. So it takes a lot of time to help people with tech. I think, as probably a lot of you know.
Thank you, Stacy. Since we're almost at time, I just wanted to draw you to two resources, and I think I'm sort of at the end of the hour, we have two resources that we really want you to check out. One is a digital divide index, which gives you more information on what the digital divide looks like in your local space, in your county, something that's going to really help you think about what something like this could look like as you provide these services. It's a lot of times validating what you already know, but it's helpful to kind of have data like that. Lastly, I want to introduce you to two resources that we have. One, we have a Digital Navigator Toolkit, which is more of an implementation toolkit, really helpful as you sort of envision what something like this could look like in your program, in your state. And then we have a new hub. We're calling it a Digital Navigator Resource Hub, an easy way for somebody who's working already, wearing 5 hats already, to really have key resources that they can rely on to help learners around specific tasks that they need to do. We're big fans of Stacy's and her team's framework, and we're really thinking about, and we kept that in mind as we thought about the categories in which we divided up the resource hub, and seeing what would be the most valuable for digital navigators. So you're going to see a lot of overlap there. And happy to answer any questions in the breakout. Somebody asked a question in the chat about about devices and how people can choose devices. There are some resources around that in the resource hub. So I would be a good plug to kind of go in there and check it out. And I'm sure you'll all receive a direct link to the hub later as well.